Hello again, YouTube. This is Lovell with another Lovell Explains Why video. I am doing this one as a bonus video, recorded it on Saturday. I'm going to be posting it the same day. And I'm going to be explaining why I believe that Vladimir Putin is desperate in hiding weakness. Now, recently, he actually had a Donald Trump-style rally. Now, this is not typically something that Vladimir Putin does. He feels no need to because you want to talk about rigged elections? Look no further than Russia. So, a lot of his votes have been coming up 90% in favor of keeping him in power, blah, blah, blah. He's basically become an autocrat. What I believe that was is him trying to show that he is still strong. If you listen to his speech, he's talking about the success of the Russian troops and all this other crazy crap. And then on top of that, he's recently fired several hypersonic missiles at Lviv, which is a city in western Ukraine that's well away from the fighting. And it's arguable as to whether or not it has any strategic significance at all to the ground war in Ukraine at all. Well, why is he doing these things? Well, the Ukrainian military, I just checked before starting this video, ranked 22nd out of 142 in world military strength. Russia, on the other hand, was number 2, only behind us. And we have such a heavy lead in that regard. Let's put it to you this way. In naval strength, the Russians have one aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov. We have 20, including our baby flat tops. So supercarriers and our LHDs account for 20 aircraft carriers, both in what would be traditionally called escort and fleet carrier size. And for a little bit of clarification there, the escort carriers would normally be with Marine Expeditionary Units, and they would not launch things like F-18s. They're not like the really big carriers. They launch Harriers, helicopters, and now F-35Bs. Now, the supercarriers are the ones that are launching F-18 Hornets. They're the ones that have the E-3 Hawkeyes, things of that nature. They're the real big ones, the ones that weigh 90 to 100,000 tons, depending on which exact ship you're talking about. And we have a lot of those. Now, Ukraine has virtually no navy. That's been all but taken off the table, and it all has to go through the Black Sea. They have, like I said, the 22nd strongest military on the planet, and they haven't been able to put away the Ukrainian Air Force. They have not been able to decisively defeat the Ukrainian army. And because the Ukrainian people have been calling up militias left and right, they have, and not, even if they did, successfully put away the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian Air Force. Well, they'd still have insurgencies going on left and right. It'd basically be Afghanistan all over for them, which did not end well for them. 15,000 casualties and nothing to show for it. Arguably, even more the beginning of the end for us, the Soviet Union, than the Chernobyl reactor disaster, which, ironically, they fought over that failed reactor. I still don't understand that one. And so, this is actually something that the Russians have been doing for over a century now. When Tsar Nicholas II had issues portraying strength, he actually looked for a country that he thought he could put away militarily quickly. Specifically, he looked at Japan. And in 1905, he ended up declaring war on Japan, where, surprise, surprise, Japan thoroughly kicked their butt. In fact, Japan still has one of the ships that was involved in a decisive naval victory for Japan called the Aurora. Still sitting in one of their ports. They kept it as a trophy. They captured it, kept it. You can still go over and see it yourself. Well, that was actually one of the watershed moments that add to one of three revolutions that led to the rise of the Soviet Union. They got defeated by the Japanese, and then Father Capon, an Eastern Orthodox preacher, wanted to petition the Czar to try and make conditions better with suggestions and everything. But instead of actually peacefully handing off a piece of paper saying, hey, we like this, he and his other peaceful protesters were fired upon by Russian troops. Not exactly a good look for a czar. And that directly led to the first of the three revolutions that ended up being the rise of the likes of Lenin, Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev, Brezhnev, and eventually Gorbachev. And so, and the Russians need to actually be able to portray some measure of strength. They had to do that with the Winter War of 39, where the Soviet Union went to war with Finland. And Finland made them pay for every inch. And it actually looked pretty humiliating. Actually led directly into the decision as to why Adolf Hitler decided to invade Russia in 1941. But the Russians are often, the leaders have to look strong for the people. They have to look like good, strong Russians, look like Iron Men. If you can't put away the 22nd strongest military on the planet as the number 2 military on the planet, well, you're not exactly looking strong. So he held that rally. It's also part of the reason why you actually have seen a video, might have seen a video of Vladimir Putin doing judo moves. And also part of the reason why there is a picture, a very famous picture of Vladimir Putin riding shirtless, horseback on a horse, looking like he's got made of nothing but muscles. It's all designed to make the man look strong, and I have to agree with with General McMaster. Sorry, first time I've heard about the man. He was a captain, and that was 31 years ago. Sorry, General. That you've gained quite a bit of rank since then. But yeah, with that being said, General McMaster had it right. Whenever Putin does something like this to portray that he is strong, I believe he is hiding weakness. After all, there are some places like Kherson, the one city that the Russians did successfully capture, and now it's contested territory again. The Ukrainians are starting to take it back. It may take them some time to do so, because 22nd strongest military taking on the second strongest military, they're not going to do things overnight. And then on top of that, they have failed to encircle Kyiv. They have encircled Mariupol, but it is not falling. You would think that with them being under siege for several days now, especially again, 22nd strongest military versus second strongest military, that the second strongest military would have taken that city by now. Has not happened. The Ukrainians are not giving up. So, and it's like eventually, even with these signs of strength that Vladimir Putin is putting forward, even through the state media, the average Russian might see through it. So, it leads to the best possible case scenario I listed off upon the start of this conflict, which I still maintain does not need to happen, and I might do another explains why video as to why this fight never needed to start in the first place. And in fact, that sounds like a good idea now that I say that out loud. if the Ukrainians can continue to make this as bloody as possible for the Russians, make it so that way they lose more than 50% of their strength, for example. There was 150,000 some odd troops that was involved in the attack in Ukraine. That was part of the initial strength. So if you're talking about 75,000 or more of them are taken out of battle because of being killed, wounded, or captured, even Vladimir Putin might have to rethink his campaign. And they've already reached at least 10%, because from what I understand, the confirmed killed is about 15,000. Combine that with a general rule of thumb of the wounded being 2 to 3 times that, they've reached 45,000 that have been effectively taken out of battle. That is basically a third of Putin's troops. That doesn't even count the ones that have been captured or surrendered. So, we're getting there. And the Russians, instead of attacking like they have instead been digging in, which means the war in Ukraine has actually reached a critical tipping point. They've lost the ability to attack. They've lost the initiative. And that is a very, very big thing. And at the same time, their commanders have proven to be incompetent. In a lot of cases, they're actually using unencrypted radios, which is part of the reasons why, to this point, I am aware of the generals have lost 5 generals, including a lieutenant general. And to put it in perspective, lieutenant general that has 3 stars on his uniform. So, that's some pretty high rank. And in unencrypted radios, that's huge in the fact that you can actually listen in on what they're trying to say. And especially if you don't have a way to confuse the signal location devices, you can actually locate exactly where that signal's coming from. So you know what they're saying to each other, you know where it's coming from, so you know exactly who's on the other end when you blow it to smithereens. So you know if it's Lieutenant Brevriat. Wow, I just said hello in Russian. Lieutenant Gutsnev or General Zaitsev. You know who's on the other end. And you know what they're talking about and how important they are to the war effort. So hence part of the reason why they've been able to bump off 5 generals. Huge numbers in the terms of generals. And usually in a single battle, no general gets wounded or killed. And it's very, very rare that any army loses a general, even in the world wars. Even in the U.S. Civil War, it was unusual to lose a general. It's part of the reason why General Jackson was such a huge loss to the Confederacy at the Battle of Chancellorsville. So, the Ukrainians have done rather well for themselves, and in a lot of cases, the Russians have failed at basic war. Failure on the supply lines, failure to keep the initiative, failure to use proper encryptions and communication systems, and just failure to maintain proper morale. They've actually even lied to a lot of their troops. A lot of the Russians, even some of the officers, have said they had no idea they were going into Ukraine. They had no idea they were going into battle. They were told it was an exercise. And that is a huge no-no when it comes to military command. You don't lie to your troops. And if you do, you just kind of conceal it. You don't mention it. But that was an outright lie. You don't do that. Yeah, it's like, and a lot of the Russians, they have no fuel. Some of them have no ammunition. Some of them are so poorly equipped that the Mosin Nagant, which was the rifle that saw Russia through 2 world wars, it actually is amongst the ones that are equipped today. Yeah, that was mind blowing to me because they switched over to the AK-47 a long time ago. It's like the Mosey Nagant was phased out in favor of the SKS, which was phased out in favor of the AK-47, which was phased out in favor of the AK-74, was phased out for another variation of the AK. And it's like, so why do they still have the Mosey Nagant? That rifle is over 100 years old now. And they're still equipping it. There's no scope on them. I've seen them. The Russian soldier had iron sights on his. And I was like, okay. The last time anybody had major success with a Mosey Nagant with iron sights that was truly impressive was Simo Herhe, a Finnish sniper that was using a Finnish variation of the Mosey Nagant. And he was so deadly, the Russians nicknamed him White Death. And he got 505 kills in only just over 100 days of war. And for his trouble, they got a piece of his jaw right here. I'd say that was pretty successful, but... So, yes, the Russians are poorly equipped, poorly supplied, and have lost the initiative. And they can't even maintain proper communication. So, the Ukrainians have a lot of ways to exploit these weaknesses. So, the Ukrainians are going to counterattack. They're going to send more Russians home in body bags. And I actually believe about 5-6 months from now, the Ukrainians will have either completely retaken Ukraine or somewhere close to it. They might even attempt a counteroffensive that might retake Crimea that they lost in 2014. So, territory they lost 8 years ago. And another indication that the Russians are not doing well and are in desperation mode is that the quote-unquote peace feelers have actually changed their tune a bit. When the war first started, the terms were basically unconditional surrender. There was going to be no Ukraine. Ukraine belongs to Russia now. Boom. Ukraine said, shove it. And because they've said shove it often enough and hard enough, the peace feelers now say, we want your most strategic positions that we've already strategic positions that we've already taken, along with Mariupol and Odessa. And the Ukrainians are saying shove it, because that would be humiliation to them. It would take away all of their most valuable territory from them, and they're saying, we ain't playing that game. Because after all, it would make them a landlocked country. They would no longer have access to any sea trade, because they have no longer access to the Black Sea at all. Which the Black Sea leads to the Mediterranean Sea, and depending on how you go in the Mediterranean Sea, you might go south through the Suez Canal into the Indian Ocean, or you might go west past the Strait of Gibraltar and into the Atlantic. Very, very important that they keep that, if they want to have too much international trade at all. It would mean either that or go through, say, Finland, Sweden, Poland, one of the Baltic states, in order to get more international trade going. So the Ukrainians aren't going to agree to that. So this is my assessment 1 month in. Ukraine done supremely well. I mean, their neighbors, the Finns, are probably thinking about that Winter War 39, where they too did extremely well. And a lot of the people, anybody else who has expansionistic tendencies towards Russia, is probably thinking, oh, hey, the Russians are pushovers now. Time for us to take advantage of it. Which, at the moment, there's only one that actually has any sort of thing at all towards it, and that's currently an ally to Russia. That is China. And China has contested territory in the form of Vladivostok. But I don't think I'd be kind of surprised if China decided to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and post this video the same day I recorded it. And let me know what you think about my explanation of why I think Russia's in a weak position. And again, I agree with General McMaster. This has been Lovell Hawes, and again, I hope you guys have a good day, and y'all have a good day now.